Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material.
Without objection.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise this evening to deliver my final floor speech as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. For 26 years now, it has been the privilege of my lifetime to serve my incredible constituents of California's 12th Congressional District. Now, I was sworn in on April 21st, 1998. The late, great Ronald V. Dellums retired early. I was his former intern, his former staffer, and he was my former colleague, my mentor and good friend. Ron was actually the first African-American chair of the House Armed Services Committee, and I'll remember that day so well. He sat right here and encouraged me to give that first speech and to actually turn around and to sign a petition then calling for campaign finance reform, and I was the 218th vote to sign the discharge petition on my swearing-in day, which I was very proud of. And let me just first and foremost thank my staff and all of the members of Team Lee that have worked tirelessly to serve our district 24/7 and to help us achieve so much. These are truly dedicated public servants, and their commitment has undoubtedly left an indelible mark not only on myself, but on our district and our country. And as we say, I say constantly, once a member of Team Lee, always a member of Team Lee. Also, let me take a minute to thank my family who have stood beside me through all of the triumphs and challenges of the last 26 years. I could not have done it without them. Now, in 1998, my late mother, Mildred Parrish Massey, my late father, Garvin A. Tutt, my stepmother, Rayco Tutt, my auntie Juanita, who passed away at 100, and my auntie Lois, who just passed away at 103. They all were with me. They're not here today, but they have been my guardian angels over the years to guide me and to keep me moving forward. Also, my sisters, Beverly and Mildred, were with me, their husbands, Martin and Calvin, and my 2 sons, Craig and Tony, well, Carl, AKA Tony, Carl Anthony Lee. They both were with me. Now they have their families, and I have 5 beautiful grandchildren. Now, actually, and I just have to say, on that day that I was sworn in, I was talking to my dear friend and colleague, Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove, and who was a co-founder of the Slow Fashion Caucus. And I just want to say, where's Sidney? To you, my sister, thank you so much, because I am wearing the same thing that I wore on April 21st, 1998, when I was sworn in. Now, this caucus is a caucus that is very important because it's creating climate-smart policies to reduce repair and wear and to recycle textiles. But the only thing I've done with this outfit is to just shorten it a bit. But it's the exact same outfit I wore April 21st, 1998. So, Sidney, thank you very much for your leadership. Yeah, I'm the kind of OG of that caucus. So as I look back on my time, though, I feel a sense of gratitude for the opportunity to not only serve my community, but to advance justice, equity, and peace throughout our country and the entire world. I am a woman of faith. I attended St. Joseph's Catholic School in El Paso, Texas. I was taught by the Sisters of Loretta, whose motto is going where the need is the greatest, and whose work, and they acknowledge this forever since they have been founded, their work for peace and justice, that has informed me since my childhood. And so I must tonight, as I give my last speech on this floor, after over 25 years of service, I'm reminded of a scripture, Galatians 6, verse 9, which says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. And so I just want to thank all of my colleagues who are with me tonight to really say to them that I love them, I appreciate their support, and that I could not do anything without the support of Democrats and Republicans, friends and colleagues. And now I would like to yield to the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus from Nevada, someone who is my sister's congressional member, someone who has done a phenomenal job as our chair in leading us to new heights, Chairman Stephen Horsford.
I thank the Speaker. Thank you for this time, and I want to first give honor and to acknowledge a dear friend, a colleague, and a mentor as we take this special order hour to thank Congresswoman Barbara Lee. You truly are a gift, you are a treasure, and your service is an example for all to follow. For 26 years, Representative Barbara Lee has been an advocate for justice, equality, and peace, both at home and abroad. Her commitment to these principles has set a standard for all of us in this chamber. I've had the privilege of collaborating with her on many initiatives, from expanding health care access to advancing racial and economic justice. Her leadership within the Congressional Black Caucus, as a former chair herself, has amplified the voices of marginalized communities and ensured that their concerns are addressed at the highest levels. Representative Lee's dedication to peace is shown by her consistent stance in foreign policy matters. And it was her lone vote against the authorization for the use of military force in 2001 that showed how she will always stick to her convictions. Representative Lee, your impact on Congress, on our communities, on our country, and really on all of us will be felt for generations to come. Your legacy continues to inspire us as we work to uphold the values that you've championed. I want to say on behalf of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, we thank you for your service, for your leadership, and for your commitment to justice. You are a dear friend, you are a true colleague, and you've been a mentor. I wish you all the very best in your future endeavors, and I know that your influence will remain with us for years to come. God bless you. Barbara Lee speaks for me. I yield back.
Let me thank my friend, Congressman Horsford, for that very sincere and very humbling statement and remarks, and thank him again for his leadership. I'd like now to yield to Erica Lee Carter of Texas, who has made her mark in this Congress, not only on behalf of her dear late mother, Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, who we all know that this is her twin right here, but she's doing a great job here. And Erica, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for upholding your mother's spirit and legacy, but also for charting a course forward.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and I'll be very brief because you have so many great friends here, but your last name is Lee, and you and my mother were like sisters from another mother, and I thank you for being that to my mother, the Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee, for your entire term of service, for standing up for progressive values, for being part of the Progressive Caucus, for holding that organization up and taking it forward and making it so impactful in this body. I thank you for being there the first Juneteenth. You have family down in Texas and Galveston, and she was so excited. Y'all were both so excited to see each other, to celebrate freedom, the real freedom for Black people in this nation. And I hope that we continue, I will continue, I know you will continue to uplift that holiday and make it important for all Americans to understand how we make this a more perfect union. So I know many will tell your many accomplishments and working on HIV/AIDS, which is so important, being the lone vote after 9/11. always standing in truth and power, always standing up and never being afraid, never backing down, always being unbought and unbossed. So I just thank you on behalf of myself, because you've always been an inspiration to me, watching from behind the scenes, intergenerational leader, inspiring the next generation of women, Democratic women, women across this nation. And thank you for traveling with my mother, loving my mother, voting with my mother, fighting with my mother, taking pictures with my mother. We will miss you. Barbara Lee speaks for me. Thank you.
Congresswoman Lee Carter, thank you so much for your leadership and your friendship. I was her mother's personal photographer, and we did travel the world, and anything, what Sheila wanted, Sheila got, because she was a true warrior woman, and so are you, so thank you. Now I'd like to yield to my colleague and good friend from California, Southern California. Where is Sydney? She's, okay, let me go now to Gwen Moore from Wisconsin, who is a very good friend. I visited her district several times, as she actually was in a film, a documentary, and I want to thank her for that, which was of Barbara Lee, speaking truth to power, but she was the star of that documentary. Gwen Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for yielding to me, Barbara. This is a very emotional moment for me to see you leaving this body, and you'll never leave my presence. It'll always be part of my life. I'm going to follow you wherever you go, Barbara Lee. But I just want to say that Barbara Lee has always been kind of a broker-dealer to me. She is someone, as her sisters of her Catholic training encouraged her to do, to go where the need is the greatest. And I remember one of my earliest memories of Barbara Lee was 20 years ago, when I went to the first Democratic caucus and got almost into a fist fight with Steny Hoyer, as the consultants were urging us to not use the word poor. Don't talk about poverty. That's kind of a bad message. That won't help us win. And let me just tell you, I was ready to fight and argue. I mean, I had decided to kind of reinvent myself coming from the Wisconsin State Legislature and to be a kinder, gentle lady from Wisconsin. But already I was stepping into big doo-doo with Steny Hoyer, the caucus, minority leader. As Steny Hoyer defended our consultants' admonition that we don't use poor as a word. And Barbara Lee not only came alongside me to encourage me and to try to validate me as I argued in my very strident, loud, obstreperous way, disruptive. Not only did she come aside me, but she worked Steny into putting together a task force on poverty and worked him into committing himself on a weekly basis to bringing in speakers, to bringing in experts, to bringing in people to talk about poverty in a way that ultimately, I believe, led us to one of the most revolutionary bills that has ever been passed in this House of Representatives, and that was when we had the child tax credit as it was envisioned under the Affordable, under the American Rescue Plan, thank you, when literally we were able to cut the poverty of Black children in half and cut poverty among all children by 40%, where we were able to establish and prove and demonstrate that an investment in our children was an investment, unlike all the other stuff we talk about. Tax cuts are going to pay for themselves. We saw in a very short period of time the return on investing in children. And that conversation really was made manifest by Barbara Lee, bringing the issue of poverty to the front. I was on welfare, and Barbara was too. And it wasn't something that we talked about. Is that right, Barbara? It was sort of an embarrassment.
It was an embarrassment, and it was a stigma on us, welfare queens, right?
That's right.
That's what they tried to call
queens.
us.
It was a stigma, and I was the welfare queen, and Barbara came and befriended me, and she went where the need was the greatest. Barbara Lee was very much she was our United Nations representative. We talked about her, all of her international impact. And Barbara Lee was our United Nations, our Congress United Nations representative. And Barbara, you did so much in that space to bring the American side, to have us visiting the UN, because there are so many people in the United States that are not necessarily as supportive of the world and the United Nations, but you represented us so well. We have a country in our own hemisphere, Cuba, that is right in our hemisphere, Haiti, right in our hemisphere, full of people who are poor and destitute and marginalized. And Barbara Lee, being that broker-dealer, was not ashamed of them, was not someone who shied away from them, even though there was not only stigma, but contempt and disdain and disbelief in them. And so Barbara went to Cuba. She's been to Cuba so many times. And the last time she went to Cuba, I went with her. And as she was introducing all of us there, she introduced me and said, well, the reason that Gwen Moore is here is because she said that if I came back to Cuba one more time without her, she was going to kill me. So that's how I got a chance to go to another country in our hemisphere and really see the resources that this country could bring to us. That's where Barbara learned about how doctors from the United States, people from the United States, Barbara, were going to Cuba, and maybe you could just share with us becoming doctors at state expense, how they were providing care for people with diabetes without those folks getting amputations. Barbara, can you share a little bit about that? This was just revolutionary to me to experience that with you.
Well, let me just say to Representative Gwen Moore, I'm so happy that you came to Cuba in spite of, no option for me except to invite you to Cuba, because, you came back and continued to do the work to help normalize relations with Cuba. All we want are normal relations. There's so many scientific discoveries that Cuba has developed that Americans could benefit from, and there's much we have developed that the Cuban people could benefit from. And let me tell you, there's a treatment that prevents amputations from diabetes. Representative Burgess, who we honored earlier, knows about that treatment, Hebrapro-B. And we saw in the clinics 80 to 90% effectiveness used all around the world, but because of the embargo, we weren't able to get a clinical trial here in America because of the embargo. Well, let me just bring you up to date very quickly. This procedure prevents amputations for those who have diabetes, and of course the black community, brown communities have disproportionate rates of amputations. 90% effectiveness. So finally, we got clinical trials. You talk about do not give up, the scripture, finally. And so finally there's a company now that is in phase 3? I believe it's phase 3 of the clinical trials. And so hopefully we'll be able to have this treatment in America. Can you imagine it's taken 25, 30 years just to get this far, and how many people could have benefited from it? And while we're talking about Cuba, I was recently there, and I wanted to just insert into the record, Representative Moore, on your time, a letter to President Biden, because many of us have been trying to remove Cuba from the state sponsor of terrorism list. And this is from over 130 civil society organizations of Cuba, not the government, civil society, but I'm just going to read one paragraph. Cuba is not a terrorist state. There's absolutely no evidence that may support a claim otherwise, has been recognized by the overwhelming majority of the international community in many sectors in the United States, including a number of U.S. government specialized agencies that, by the way, attach great value, mind you, great value to their professional cooperation with Cuba in their fight against this scourge. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to insert this into the record. Unanimous consent?
Without objection.
Thank you very much. And we have forwarded this letter to President Biden asking him to remove Cuba from the state sponsor of terrorism list, with at least 20 members who have signed that letter. Thank you again.
And you know what, Barbara, Representative Lee, this is what I admire about so much. Your engagement has not only been, we all go to the White House and, we're in awe, and we shake the hand of the president and the first lady, and we meet up with them and take selfies with them. And you always put the presidents to work. And so we're going to continue on. We can promise you that we're going to continue to make sure that we get to normalize our relations with Cuba. But George W. Bush, a Republican, you got in his face, and you are the initiative. One of the things that George W. Bush will always be remembered for is his initiative on HIV/AIDS and saving millions of lives, not only in Africa, but all around the world. But I just want to remind people that here, once again, was Barbara Lee breaking down a door of stigma, because while most people were distancing themselves from HIV/AIDS patients, because, people saying, they were in sin and they had somehow deserved it, somehow. Barbara Lee was one of the people that marched right on up to the White House and made sure that someone in high places like George W. Bush that gave him the cover to have the courage around this issue and break through that stigma. Barbara, let me thank you for that. Let me ask you to share with us a little bit more about that journey.
Representative Moore, thank you very much for reminding us of that. And let me just say, because of Republicans and Democrats, we have saved 25 million lives, and we must have a permanent clean extension of PEPFAR. But President Bush and I disagreed on every single policy. I voted against everything that he put forward, but we came together to save lives. And I want to thank him. I want to thank all of those who, up until this point, have kept this bipartisan and encourage Republicans and Democrats to continue to do that. And I'll be working on this from the outside. And Representative Moore, thank you very much for being here tonight with us, and I hope that you'll be able to stay for a few more minutes as soon as I yield to someone.
Oh, you want me to stop talking?
No. I just have to yield to a couple of members, and then I want to come back to you if you can.
All right,
stay.
I will, because I need to ask you about a couple more things about that Galatians 6:9.
Yeah.
And so I will return
just
to the mic.
Hold tight for 1 second.
Thank you.
I thank you very much. I reserve the balance of your time.
I can't reserve my time.
I'm reserving
it's
it
your
for you.
time, Barbara, all of it.
Let me now yield to my sister from Georgia, Representative Lucy McBath, who came to Congress hitting the ground running out of a very personal tragedy of gun violence in which she lost her son. And here she is moving forward being very successful in making sure that our young people are safe and that gun violence is no more. Thank you, Congresswoman McBath.
Well, thank you so much. Barbara Lee speaks for me. Thank you so much for yielding to me. And Mr. Speaker, I do rise today to honor my dear colleague and friend, Congresswoman Barbara Lee from California, who will be retiring at the end of a long-standing and extraordinarily remarkable career in Congress. Congresswoman Lee, you are more than a servant leader to America. You are an example by which countless women of color can seek to emulate as we step up to be the voices of our communities. You are unabashed in speaking truth to power and unwavering in your convictions for change and your convictions for community and your convictions for helping the least of these. And I truly wish there were so many more people here that would stand on those very convictions. Barbara, you have never been afraid to stand up and speak out, even when the odds are against you. And you inspire me each and every single day. I mean, I see you running around here and making deals and dealing with people and your bipartisanship and reaching across the aisle. And I see you walking these halls, I mean, literally running these halls to do the work of the people with new fervor for progress in America. I am truly going to be so sorry to see you leave. You're such a galvanizing voice. And I know as you continue to transition away from the halls of Congress, I know that your work is not finished yet. I'm encouraged by everything that you have done here, everything you've done preceding the time that I have come to Washington. I really look forward to everything that you're going to be doing going forward. I know that your work is not finished yet. God is not done with you yet. And I just look forward to the next chapter of leadership, you know, in your life, what that's going to look like for the communities that you represent. Just as it was expressed even earlier, you know, just like Representative Shirley Chisholm, who is, you know, our leader, you have always been unbought and unbossed. You are a light in this world. You are a city on a hill. A name that's never going to be forgotten. And I want to thank you very, very much for when I first came here, people kept telling me I couldn't be on judiciary because I wasn't an attorney and I didn't have the experience and I didn't know how to fight for justice. But you said to me, if this is where you believe you need to be, and we know why you've come to Congress, I will make it happen. And thank you for allowing me to use my voice in the halls of Congress for reform and justice and gun safety and all the things that I so believe in. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be able to stand for justice and democracy in these halls. And I'm going to miss you.
I'm going to miss you too, Congresswoman Lucy McBath, but just look at you and how far you've come in leadership now on that Judiciary Committee and where you are in honor of your son. And just look at what you have done to bring this House together, to focus on the issues of gun violence, working with many, many colleagues. And as I listen to you, I'm very humbled by what you're saying, and I'm reminded back of this scripture, let us not grow weary of doing good. And so I just want you to stand tall and continue to fight the good fight, because the country needs you right here, fighting for life.
Thank you.
Of our young. Thank you very much. God bless you. Okay, I'd like now to yield to my sister, my Palestinian sister, whose voice speaks for many, many people in our own country and throughout the world. And Rashida Tlaib not only is a voice for people who never had a voice in this body, but she's also a great legislator. And I always like to tell people, you know, Rashida Tlaib cares about clean water. She cares about public safety. She cares about housing. She cares about making sure that her constituents have the best constituent services in the country. As the best representative, who we all model our district offices after, Rashida Tlaib.
Thank you so much to Congresswoman Lee. Of course, she cannot just let us speak about the incredible, powerful leadership she has had in this chamber for 26 years. She, of course, I was blessed, no idea she was going to be assigned as a mentor to me, and then birthed the wonderful E-Grant newsletters, because she told me this is what you got to do, is fight for your access to and fair share of our resources for our districts. She got me right on the task force on poverty. Thank you for that. You've been incredible, again, the last 26 years. Your determination in what I've watched you do has changed this institution forever. You've not only created this amazing momentum and movement around talking about poverty in this institution that really wasn't ready for people like us, Congresswoman Lee. And you push back against the stigma and health disparities of our neighbors living with HIV and AIDS when it was unpopular. Ending the discriminatory Hyde Amendment that restricts access to abortion care when some people in this chamber would not even say the word abortion. You have done so much for all the incredible residents of the city of Oakland and the surrounding communities. I want to take a moment and thank them. Thank them for continuing to send you here to this body, to continue letting you change this institution to be better. It will be forever changed because Congresswoman Barbara Lee served here for 26 years. You know, there is a saying, Audra Lord's quote, and it just reminds me of you, Barbara. She said, quote, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important of whether I am afraid." Barbara, you sat in that well with me when I got censured. You told me to keep my head up held high. In that moment, it wasn't just about me, but the fact that it was about your character and the fact that you understood what it meant to be feeling alone, even again, standing up and saying, it is okay to speak truth to power. It is okay to be able to say, save lives no matter faith or ethnicity. And you did it in such a powerful, graceful way. I will never forget you. You know I'm going to call you all the time. But you know I come from the most beautiful, blackest city in the country. And even though you may not have been born and raised in Detroit, we are going to take you in as one of our own because you've been doing that here in this chamber and teaching us from afar how to do it right. Thank you. Thank you for, again, making this institution better. Congresswoman Lee, it is not the same because of you. It is now better, and it has created space for people like myself, Congresswoman Moore, Congressman Macbeth, and again, you've opened doors for many of us in this chamber. Thank you. Thank you for your service to our country. God bless you.
Thank you, my sister, Rashida Tlaib. Let me thank you for your strength and for, again, being a voice that has never been represented before on this floor. And also, let me thank you for staying strong and not growing weary, Rashida, because you were my mentee. You were. But it didn't take long for you to get it. And so I know you, and I see you, and I know what it means to be here. And so don't grow weary. Keep at it. Thank you again for being here. Paul Tonka, my relative's representative and my friend from New York, who I love dearly, and thank you for being here this evening. I'm going to miss you, but I'll be seeing you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to the gentlelady from California for yielding. And yes, they're a good family, and I enjoy being their representative, but absolutely powerful moment this evening in the House to hear everyone, your friends, your colleagues, recap the history you have written as a Congress rep and the service you have provided in this House. So it's my colleague, our colleague, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, that has been a progressive champion and who is a fierce advocate and dear friend during my time in Congress. Barbara, what impacts me most is that you're a powerful voice, a very bold voice, a very determined voice, a passionate voice, and oftentimes a lone voice, because you felt the moment that challenged you had to be addressed by your fierce loyalty to awesome causes. Your efforts in this body will be remembered for your courage, your tenacity, and your strength of spirit. You have dedicated your time as an elected representative to serving those in need, sometimes the voiceless, whether it be the global HIV/AIDS community, those in need of housing or reproductive health care rights, and certainly education and fairness in education. Your advocacy for your constituents in the East Bay area spans decades, ranging from your time as a social worker, as a congressional staffer, as a small business owner, as a state legislator, and certainly your powerful record as a member of Congress. I've been honored to work with you on issues that are close to my heart, including the entire climate issue, to make certain we hand over our planet in better stead to those that will follow us. Certainly the addiction policy efforts that you have made, treating those with the illness of addiction with high regard and high priority, and the expansion of STEM education. These are all important areas, but you, my friend, have been a titan of this body. I'm honored to have served with you. I think in many of the gatherings that we've had in offering the official goodbyes, it's so obvious that you're genuine, you're authentic, and as we've heard from your very first moments of life, there was a reason your mom shared with the world that you were saved in that moment to live a life of service, and it has proven itself so true. So honored to be with you. I will take good care of those constituents in the 20th Congressional District. I yield back, and God bless you, and Godspeed.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your those words and for your friendship and for your leadership and for being someone who I can talk to confidentially. You know, you mentioned my mother. Actually, when she was giving birth, she needed a C-section. They would not admit her to the hospital because she was black. Bottom line is she almost died in childbirth. And bottom line is I almost didn't get here. I almost didn't breathe, and my mother almost died. And so that's where my fight for women's health, for justice, for gender equality began, at birth. Thank you for that reminder, Paul. Bobby Scott, another representative who's a great leader, supports and puts forth policies to help our working men and women, the middle class and low-income people, to really grow the middle class by moving into the middle class, but also somebody who cares about our young people, education, HBCUs, minority-serving institutions. He's really a man of all seasons, and I just want to thank him. He represents another part of my family in Virginia. Paul Tonka represents one part of the Lewis family in New York, and Bobby is my family's Virginia representative. So thank you again, Bobby.
Well, thank you, Barbara. And this is not about me. This is about you and your great legacy, your legislative legacy, and that you've done a great job here as a legislator, and you'll leave a great legacy. And there are two parts of that legacy that I wanted to emphasize. They've been mentioned already tonight, but the first is the advocacy that you had to create the Poverty Task Force. We raised a lot of money to try to get elected, and poverty is rarely mentioned as an issue. And you not only created the task force, but you've also used that task force to create targeted, effective ways to actually address the issue of poverty. And the other is the issue of global AIDS. The global AIDS crisis, your work with the Bush administration has been phenomenal. To paraphrase Martin Luther King, AIDS anywhere is a threat of AIDS everywhere. And if we don't address it everywhere, it threatens the rest of the world. And your work convinced the George W. Bush administration to actually allocate the order of magnitude of resources needed. I mean, there were discussions a little here and a little there, but you kept on them until they actually put the kind of money that was necessary. And it is not an exaggeration to say that tens of millions of people are alive today because of your work. And so I want to thank you, Barbara Lee, for all of your work, especially the work for those who would not have a voice without you. Thank you, Barbara Lee.
Thank you so much, Representative, Ranking Member Bobby Scott, former chair. I want to thank you for your leadership, and I feel that our children, their future is secure with you here. And again, as you spoke, I have to go back to Galatians 6, verse 9, when I opened, because I'm hearing this over and over again. Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we'll reap if we do not give up. And I think all of you have spoken to that, not only about myself, but about yourselves. So I want to thank you. And I just pulled the scripture out of the clear blue sky tonight, thinking about what to say, and all of you are validating this. Danny Davis of Illinois, my friend, my brother, somebody who's worked so hard to make sure that our young people have a second chance. So many have been unjustly incarcerated behind nonviolent offenses who should be able to go through rehabilitation, get a job, and go on and live their lives. Danny was the author of The Second Chance. Also, his work on sickle cell and diabetes and all the healthcare issues are remarkable. Danny, thank you for being here this evening, for being my friend.
Well, Barbara, thank you, and I couldn't let the evening go by without coming to pay tribute to you, one of the fiercest, most courageous, hardest working, most energized persons I've ever known during my lifetime. And seeing what you have contributed and the way in which you have done it, as I listened to each one of the people who spoke, World AIDS Day probably wouldn't be taking place. We just celebrated it 1st of December. And people all over the country and all over the nation celebrating World AIDS Day. That's a part of your work. The focus on SNAP, hungry people, people needing food, that's a part of your work. Making sure that people got second chances, that they got money every session. When we get to appropriations, we always say, are we really going to get the money we need for people to have these programs? So Barbara Lee is there. And we know that Barbara's got our back. The focus on international relationships. I think I got 2 boxes of Castro cigars. I never smoked, but I got 2 boxes of Castro cigars where he would keep us up all night. Never wanted to quit and go to bed. Somebody would have to say, Mr. President, we got other people to see tomorrow and other things to do. And the whole health arena, how much fun that I had working with Clyde and the folks out in San Francisco, Oakland, where when we started with what is known as the federally qualified health centers, I started, there were 10. Now there are 1,400 all over America. 1,400. Taking care of more than 30 million low and moderate income people in this country. So Barbara, you've done it. My mother used to tell us a little poem, and she used to say, if you can't be a pine at the top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley, but be the best little scrub by the side of the river. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the moon, be a star. It's not by size that you win or fail, but be the best, the very best of whatever you are. That's what you've been. That's what you are, my sister. God bless you. Keep on working. I yield back.
Danny, thank you so much for those beautiful words. Also, you're our resident poet, we know, but you're able to articulate how the spirit moves in public policy. And so I want to thank you for showing us where the North Star is so that we could move in that direction. So thank you very much
what the Spirit
for being
say.
here.
Right up.
Mark DeSaulnier, my neighbor and friend from next door who has come to Congress, and we have become very good friends and colleagues and really charted some new courses with you and brought them to Capitol Hill to get our Democratic caucus to talk about race. Can you believe that? Like race and racism. Mark DeSaulnier.
I'm sorry if I was a work in progress, but sometimes you look at me, you get that look on your face, and you're like,
he's come around all the way, full circle.
He just doesn't get it sometimes. Barbara, I just, as a neighbor, a colleague, and a friend, I just wanted to come down and thank you and talk about two specific instances where you made me a better person. And it is an example of how you've illuminated this country about if you can't talk about trouble, then you can't talk about love. You can't talk about making people better. We were down here in the well when I first got here after Ferguson, and Elijah Cummings and John Lewis were sitting right there. And I can't remember which of one of us started this, but the conversation was, if we can't talk about race in the Bay Area, and gosh knows we've got enough trouble there, where the heck in the country can we? So we started that. And you taught me so much. John Powell from the Haas Institute of Diversity, and just a wonderful man, Yoda. And all his staff would come to these town halls. I don't know how many we had, but Judy Chu came, Karen Bass came, Ted Lieu, in a very diverse area in our two districts. But it was wonderful, and I learned so much about myself and my own biases and prejudices. And it was illuminating too, because I had liberal white Democrats come up to me, and I told you this, and say, why are you doing this? And you had one of those moments where you're like, hey, why are you surprised? But it was, and then we brought John back here to the Democratic caucus, and I'm told at the time it was the largest turnout the caucus ever had, because Professor Powell talked about his experience at Ohio State and Cal and his studies on diversity and why confronting bias and racism was so important for the health of this country. So that was wonderful and continues to be, and we're going to continue to do it. And then recently, and this, you don't know this, but Port Chicago 50, for people who don't know about the Port Chicago 50, the largest loss of life, domestic loss of life in the United States during World War II, when this very segregated racist Navy was having black African-American sailors load ships out of Port Chicago, which is in San Francisco Bay in my district, in our neighborhood. These young men came from all over the country in the 40s because they wanted to defend America in spite of all of our flaws, particularly from the South. And they were told how to load munitions in such a way that was so dangerous and so different from the white Teamsters who did the same work. And one day, because of this disregard, the white officers would actually bet on which group would load more, and they'd just throw these weapons into these ships. Well, one morning, disaster struck, and a ship exploded. You could hear the explosion 20, 50 miles away, rattle windows in San Francisco, 15 miles away. They lost over 300 African-American sailors that day. They had to go down to that water the next day. Ship was gone, the pier was gone, and go into the water under instruction from their white officers to get the bodies and the parts from their colleagues out of there, and reading about that in the book and the history about it. Anyways, for 80 years this has gone on. 50 of those young men who volunteered to serve this country in horrible conditions, who survived, were taken to court-martial and got the worst possible sentence, 50 of them, for disobeying an order that they knew was dangerous. And they didn't disobey it. They just said, we're brave men. We don't want to go back to the same circumstances. So for that, they were court-martialed. Thurgood Marshall helped defend him, and as part of what he said about similar cases, I come not just to defend these men, I come to defend the sacred creed in our founding documents. So for 40 years, my predecessor tried to get it changed with your help, and for the 10 years I've been here, we've tried to get it changed. So towards the end, I was arguing with the Navy and with the White House, and in the last conversation, I was emulating you. I was a little irritated, and I said, God damn it, can't we just do this for Barbara Lee before she retires? So the secret weapon in that was, a month later, the Secretary of the Navy called me and said, we're going to exonerate those sailors. So those are just two specific examples of how you've raised people up and raised me up. And there's so much more that everyone else has talked about poverty, and your dogged determination for justice. And you've done it in a way that has gone to people who a lot of us wouldn't go to. But you've gone to everyone and said, and went after, as Lincoln said, the better angels of their nature, and were able to persuade them. So I'm going to miss you so much.
Just right next door.
I know, and I know you're going to be coming and using that finger every once in a while and going, come on, man. But thank you so much. And in our districts, if you come to the Bay Area, you can still see bumper stickers that say, and a lot of them actually, but a lot of them are faded at this point, Barbara Lee speaks for me. Indeed, Barbara, thank you for speaking for so many Americans.
Thank you so much, Congressman DeSaulnier. Let me just tell you what a pleasure it is to work with you, because, you know, there are very few people who will take on issues that they really aren't quite settled with, and you did. And because race and racism, systemic racism, all of the hate that surfaces as a result, really present a clear and present danger to our country. And you, as a white man, really understood what privilege is and understood what the history is. And I want to thank you very much for being a partner, really, because that's what this is. You know, we all have to work together. And supporting my truth resolution, H.R. 45, calling for a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, you know, we would like an executive order, but what you just said is the rationale, Mark, for why we have to have the truth told about the history of black people, especially in America, and why only with the truth can we heal, and only then can we move toward transforming this country. And so you have been an example of exactly what we're talking about. And I just want to thank you for your brilliance and your leadership, your sensitivity and your friendship. So thank you again. Love you. Love you too. Mr. Speaker, may I inquire how much time I have remaining?
The gentlewoman has 5.5 minutes.
5.5 minutes. Okay, Gwen Moore, let me just, I promise. That's okay. Is that, Terry Sewell, my sister from Alabama, did you want to speak for 30 seconds? I just have to close real quick, but you go right ahead.
Well, first let me just say that we know that Barbara Lee speaks for all of us. When I first came to Washington, Barbara, you were a great mentor and friend. And having studied about Shirley Chisholm, the stories that you told about her were so important. My favorite quote of hers is that service is the rent we pay for the privilege of living on this earth. Well, Barbara, you have actually burned a mortgage. You have done so much great work over your time in Washington and in Congress. Your legacy will loom large over this place. I want to thank you for guiding so many of us through the appropriations process. I still want a tutorial before you go.
Tomorrow.
But when I think about being effective, Barbara Lee's record is bar none one of the most important records, congressional records that we have. Your track record on funding, whether that was, all of the wonderful stuff you did for AIDS, and I could go on and on and on about how you have truly changed the world. You have earned the right to retire, but we know that there's no such thing as retiring, that you go from project to project and you excel in all. Do know that this place will not be the same without you here. I'm sorry I'm just running in, but I could not miss the opportunity to tell you how important you have been to me and to my office, and I want to say thank you. Saying thank you doesn't seem adequate enough, but do know that your legacy will live on through so many of the people that you touched, and I'm just grateful that I was one of the ones that you mentored. So thank you so much. We love you, Barbara Lee.
Well, Congresswoman Sewell, let me just say thank you, because I want to make sure everyone knows you represent Selma, Alabama. She represents the heart and soul of the civil rights movement. And Terry Sewell has put Selma and its aspirations and its dreams and its needs on the map of this House of Representatives.
And there was never a time that you didn't come with John to Selma. How many times did you make that pilgrimage on Faith and Politics? And I just want to say thank you. And not only did you bring it, you brought children from your Martin Luther King Center in Oakland, and you also started a program with the children from my district, and they got a chance to come to Oakland.
So we have this Oakland, Alabama connection. Oakland, Birmingham, Oakland, Selma connection, which is so important because of you, though, Terry.
Well, it's important because of you. We're absolutely following in your footsteps, and you leave huge steps for us to follow. So thank you, and I love you
again, and thank you for being here. Okay, Congresswoman Moore, okay, I've got to just say I'm glad you stayed here throughout this special order. How much time do I have left, Mr. Speaker? Because I have one more thing I need to say.
I think you got about 3 minutes left.
3 minutes? Okay, because let me once again thank everyone, all of my colleagues, but especially my constituents, who I considered the most enlightened and most diverse and most progressive, yes, congressional district, for giving me the faith and trust to fight alongside you for a better tomorrow. Also, I just want to say I've started with a scripture, and I want to close with one. As I leave this august body. This is Proverbs 16, verse 3. It reminds us of this. It says, "Commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans succeed. Now this comes from the Bible, even in retirement, we are called to commit our actions to God." And so, I believe in the separation of church and state. I also believe in those values that those sisters of Loretta taught me, and that was to go where the need is the greatest, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to all my colleagues for being here tonight. And thank you to the House of Representatives, both Democrats and Republicans, for, yes, being part of Team Lee.
It's a fitting. Woman yelled back. She says, I got
Okay, Gwen Moore's
45 seconds.
Close for us. Since we have 45 seconds, good.
Barbara, let me just thank you.
This is how we play jazz, right?
Just let me thank you. You're that same team, that same cheerleader that fought to integrate the cheerleading team. But once you got on the team, you were a team player. The thing that I love about you so much is that how, competitive this place is. You always tried to lift people up, to encourage them, to help them get in position. I know so much snot and tears came out of my eyes because I couldn't get on Ways and Means, but you told me, just keep on and don't give up. Barbara, thank you for encouraging us, for loving us, for getting us out of Iraq. Your leadership in everything, bringing us together on a bipartisan basis. I love you, Barbara. And this institution will never be the same.
Thank you, Gwen Moore, and I told you don't get weary, and you would get there, and you reap what you sow, and you got it. So thank you for being our voice on the Ways and Means Committee. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I yield
Time's
back.
expired. Thanks for wrapping up with that.